Hey everybody, it's Z, and today we're talking about representation. There is not a lot of trans representation, whether it's binary or non-binary representation, but there is a lot less non-binary representation because most people have heard of binary trans people, but most people have not heard of non-binary trans people, at least in the US and the UK and Canada. And these are basically the places that I'm familiar with. So, the representation that there is for binary trans people, it's usually very negative and derogatory. And this contributes to society's negative view of transgender people overall. Now, because there isn't that much non-binary representation, you might say oh, it's better to have no representation than bad representation, right? But not necessarily, because having no representation is really damaging to a person. And some people think that it isn't. They say, what does it matter whether you have representation in the media or celebrities, they will say, oh, it's just a movie or it's just a book. But it's not just a movie or just a book or just a whatever, It's actually really important. The reason why is we need positive messages to form our self-esteem, especially when we're younger. And if you don't get any messages at all about the type of person you are, you'll get, your brain will subconsciously interpret things, and you'll think, oh, people like me don't exist. Or if there is bad representation, you'll think, oh, people like me are gross and wrong. So that's why it's important to be critical of how much representation there is, and the representation that is there, it's important to, do our best to make sure that it's good representation. So we can send positive messages to non-binary people, especially non-binary kids, that they're not alone in feeling the way they do about their gender, and that it's, normal, and that they're not freaks, they're just people. Now, everybody else's videos on representation has a lot of good examples of representation, but me, myself, I only knew I could only think up 2 examples of non-binary representation in either the media or celebrities. Those 2 examples are, one, the gems from Steven Universe, where the creator, or one of the writers, I'm not sure, stated that the gems are canonically non-binary, but it is not mentioned in the show at all. So this is not good representation, because it's barely representation at all, because unless I'm sure that there are several kids who watch the show and they have no idea. And so the message isn't getting sent to them. Another example is a sort of internet celebrity and actor. Her name is Ruby Rose. She identifies as gender fluid, and she uses she, her, hers pronouns, I think. And she did a video, a video on her gender fluidity and what it's like. And that video is really popular. So that's a really good example of non-binary representation. Although it would have been, when I watched the video, I thought that she was just a cis woman who was making a comment on gender expression, which is good, it needs to be talked about, but I didn't know it had to do with her actual gender, I guess. Also, if I remember correctly, in the video she binds with bandages, which is not a good way to bind. Yeah. But anyway. But it's very good, especially since it's like actually by a non-binary person. So like you can say to someone else like, hey, you know that video? Yeah, the person who made that is non-binary and it's about their experience. So those are the only examples of non-binary representation that I even knew about before watching everybody else's videos. So that's not a lot, and that's from someone who spends a lot of their time on the internet, like talking to non-binary people and talking to other trans people, and like those are the only things that I can think of. It shows that there really isn't that much stuff out there. So I think that what people need to do is to make sure there's more good non-binary representation. And like it wouldn't be good to have more representation but it be very negative like most of the binary trans representation that is out there. Like that wouldn't help us, that would just be hurting us in a different way. So make sure that there's representation and make sure that it's good. Those are things that we can strive for. Now, the internet is a really good tool because it allows people to build communities outside of geographical limits. That means that you can get a lot more people in one community, which means you can get a lot more diversity in one community. So one thing that we want to do out of this binary is to add to the non-binary representation. Now, is the representation as powerful as if it was like in popular media or if it was a celebrity? Probably not, because like we're not reaching as many people as like a celebrity would. But we can try, and we certainly are reaching a good amount of people, and hopefully as we go on we can reach more people. In being out as non-binary in a visible, you know, place like over the internet, we are sort of like contributing our image to non-binary representation, if that makes sense, if you understand what I'm saying. And every person who puts things on the internet and is open and out with their non-binary identity is also helping add to representation, because the internet is not like an inferior form compared to like media or like popular magazines. It's just different, and it's very useful, especially in this case. So I definitely support non-binary people if they're comfortable being out on the internet and being able to connect with other non-binary people, and I think that that's very valuable, and there are places on the internet that try to give non-binary people a chance to represent themselves to the community. There are Tumblr blogs. I will list a couple down below. There are tags, either on Tumblr or on Twitter, for either for non-binary people in general or for specific non-binary identities. And I'm sure if you Google various combinations of words having to do with non-binary identities, you will find more of these like communities. And I think that this is really good and the first step to having more representation, and then that will help get us more acceptance. and hopefully, you know, one day everybody will know that there are non-binary genders that exist and be accepting of them. Okay, so go out there, make your own or find your own representation, and, you know, be proud of your non-binary identity and believe in yourself. And be sure not to put yourself down. Okay, bye.